We have some breaking news and a big headline just crossing on the Associated Press newswire. Apparently, President Donald Trump has fired the FBI Director James Comey. Comey, a very controversial figure. He has testified recently on Capitol Hill regarding investigations into possible ties between Trump and Russia. There's a CBS News special report that's about to start right now. Let's take a listen.
This is a CBS News special report. President Trump has just fired the director of the FBI, James Comey. It is an unusual move that hasn't happened since the administration of Bill Clinton. Comey, of course, has been leading the investigation of whether Russia was involved in the U.S. election in terms of influencing the election, and also whether any associates of Donald Trump were colluding with the Russians to influence the election. Comey was appointed by President Obama to a 10-year term. About 3 years of that term have gone by, so he would have had another 7 years to go. Major Garrett is at the White House for us this afternoon. Major, what can you tell us?
Well, Scott, Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, has confirmed to me that the president did take this action firing the FBI director. And the first inkling, Scott, that we got that James Comey's tenure as FBI director was in some degree of jeopardy came at today's White House briefing when Sean Spicer was asked if the president still had full confidence in the FBI director. Sean Spicer deferred on that question. He was reminded that he had said emphatically many weeks before that Comey had the president's confidence. But Spicer specifically did not use those words in relationship to Comey's stature at the FBI as of today. It's also worth pointing out that it's the FBI that has been conducting a counterintelligence investigation related to the questions raised by possible Russian activity with those in the Trump campaign, and it is that investigation that has yet to reach any conclusions about whether that collusion did or did not exist, even though this White House has asserted many times there's no evidence of that. That investigation is ongoing and continues to be somewhat of an irritant to this White House, which wants to shut down any more inquiries along that line. But the FBI has been sturdily keeping those investigations, or that investigation, open, and therefore that question unresolved.
Major Garrett at the White House for us. Major, thank you. Repeating the breaking news of the moment, President Trump has fired FBI Director James Comey. This is a very unusual situation. The FBI Director is appointed to a 10-year term in order to insulate him from politics. Comey has only served about 3 of the 10 years. He was appointed by President Obama. The president does have the power to fire the FBI Director, but only for cause. And we do not know what reason the president will cite in firing James Comey. We have Nancy Cordes for us, I'm told, on Capitol Hill. Nancy, what do you have?
Well, we've already gotten a statement from Lindsey Graham. He's a top Republican in the Senate, which indicates that he may have gotten a heads up that this firing was about to happen. He says, quote, "I know this was a difficult decision for all concerned. I appreciate Director Comey's service to our nation in a variety of roles, but given the recent controversies surrounding the director, I believe a fresh start will serve the FBI and the nation well." Now, you would imagine, given everything that happened in the week and a half leading up to the election, when Director Comey made that stunning announcement that he was reopening the Clinton investigation, only then to announce a few days later that the investigation was once again closed, that Democrats might welcome this news. But they are going to be quite apprehensive about this, Scott, and that is because they at least believe that Director Comey was more or less a straight shooter aimed at upholding the law independent of President Trump. And they are very concerned that if the president is allowed to name his own appointee to this very, very sensitive role, that will be someone who is beholden to Donald Trump and who might, for example, slow walk the investigations that are taking place into connections between Trump associates and the Russians. So you're going to see a very muted response from Democrats. Some of them feeling like James Comey has gotten, in their eyes, what he deserves. Others who feel that his replacement might be, in their eyes, even worse.
Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill. James Comey is a highly respected former Justice Department official about whom there has never been a hint of scandal. And again, we have not yet heard what reason the president is citing for firing the FBI director. We also have Major Garrett back on the White House lawn, and he has the official statement now from the White House. Major, what are they saying?
Two statements, one from the press secretary, Sean Spicer, one from the president himself in a letter to now former FBI director James Comey. The statement from Sean Spicer, the press secretary, cites the recommendation given to President Trump by Deputy Attorney General Ron Rosenstein and Attorney General Jeff Sessions to terminate James Comey. In a letter that the White House has released from the president to James Comey, dated today, in it the president says, "While I greatly appreciate you informing me," this is to James Comey, "on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau. It is essential," President Trump writes in this letter, "that we find new leadership for the FBI that restores public trust and confidence in its vital law enforcement mission." This letter says that Comey has been terminated effective immediately. Scott?
Major, would you, for clarification, read that first line again?
Yes, this is from the President of the United States to the FBI director. "While I greatly appreciate you informing me," meaning Comey informing the president, "on 3 separate occasions," I'm quoting directly, the president says, "that I am not under investigation. I," meaning President Trump in this letter, says, "nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice, that you, Comey, are not able to effectively lead the Bureau."
And what the president would have been referring to, Major, in terms of him being under investigation, would have been something to do with the FBI's investigation of whether Russia had interfered with the U.S. election that made him president.
And if there was any activity that could be construed or legally prosecuted as amounting to collusion. Now, when the president says he is not under investigation, that is one aspect, but that doesn't suggest, nor does it assert, that no one around him or associated with his campaign isn't.
Major Garrett, thanks very much. Now, we want to remind you a little bit of the background here. James Comey, of course, during the election campaign, announced that the FBI was investigating whether Hillary Clinton had misused, if you will, classified information and put it on a non-classified email server that she was using for her email correspondence at the time. After a certain point before the election, Comey came out and said that there was no reason to charge Mrs. Clinton, that some of what she had done had been extremely careless, he said, but did not rise to the level of a criminal action. Then, a few days before Election Day, Comey announced that new emails had been discovered and the FBI was reopening its investigation of Mrs. Clinton. Nothing came of that either, but former Secretary Clinton has blamed James Comey for costing her the election. There has been some controversy over the last couple of days about James Comey's testimony about the Clinton email situation. Nancy Cordes has been covering that for us on Capitol Hill. Comey testified, Nancy, recently before the Senate. Tell us what's happened today on that.
Right. He testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee 6 days ago, and this was really his first opportunity, Scott, to explain his rationale for coming out 11 days before the election and letting Congress know, in a way that he was surely aware would soon be divulged to the public, that his agents were reopening their investigation. He said that at the time when they discovered that there were hundreds and thousands, as he put it, of emails that Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's close aide, had forwarded to her husband, the former Congressman Anthony Weiner, to print out, that he felt that he simply had no choice but to alert Congress as his agents went through those emails. He also said that a number of those emails contained classified information. Well, CBS News, other news outlets quickly began to get word from sources who are close to this investigation that actually that was not the case, that Huma Abedin didn't forward hundreds and thousands of emails to her husband, but actually only sporadically forwarded emails to him, and that the bulk of these 49,000 or so emails that were on Anthony Weiner's computer actually were the result of an automatic backup of a BlackBerry device, and that none of the emails were marked classified when Abedin sent them to her husband. That has generated a great deal of confusion, as you can imagine, here on Capitol Hill, Scott. Senators from the right and the left trying to figure out exactly what the truth is and what is fiction. And it was very surprising coming from the FBI director for two reasons. First of all, as you pointed out, he is a longtime legal expert who typically chooses his words very carefully, and clearly knew that he was going to be grilled on this topic by the Senate Judiciary Committee. This was key to his explanation for why he took the steps that he did to alert Congress about the reopening of this investigation. And so it was only a few hours after word began to get out more widely here on Capitol Hill that he had either misspoken or misled Congress that this announcement came from the White House. And in fact, only a short time ago, Congress got a letter from the FBI clarifying what it was that Director Comey meant to say in that hearing last week.
Nancy Cordes, thank you very much. I want to mention that James Comey used to be the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. He was number 2 in the Justice Department running its day-to-day operations, and he was appointed to that post by Republican President George W. Bush. We also have Major Garrett back on the White House lawn. Major, you have new details as this story is breaking.
Yes, I do, Scott. I mentioned a letter to the president from Ron Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. In it, he is very critical of Director Comey's handling of the investigation and the decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election. In this letter, he says to the president, "I cannot defend the director's handling of the conclusion of the investigation of Secretary Clinton's emails, and I do not understand his refusal to accept the nearly universal judgment that he was mistaken. Almost everyone agrees that the director made serious mistakes. It is one of the few issues that unites people of diverse perspectives." The letter concludes by saying, "As a result, the FBI is unlikely to regain public and congressional trust until it has a director who understands the gravity of the mistakes and pledges never to repeat them. Having refused to admit his errors, the director cannot be expected to implement the necessary corrective actions." It is this letter from the Deputy Attorney General sent to the president that the White House says led to Comey's dismissal.
Again, this is an extremely rare event. Comey would become only the second FBI director in the history of the Bureau to be fired by the president. The other one happened in 1993 when President Clinton fired William Sessions. To repeat, President Trump has fired FBI Director James Comey. We're going to have much more about this on your local CBS station, on our streaming news service, CBSN, and right here tonight on the CBS Evening News. Until then, I'm Scott Pelley, CBS News in New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to CBSNews.com.